given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Today we have a great discussion. It deals with having presence on the yard. I had a great question that was sent my way through my email. I'm not going to say the officer's name, but this is the question. Hey, what's up, man? Having trouble with officer presence on the yard. Inmates ignore me. They don't want to follow rules. When I tell the inmates to go back, they respond, well, come on, don't be like that, and ignore my words. What can I do to have control on the yard? I gave this email over to Russ. Of course, Russ got right on it to make sure we give this officer good advice right from the get-go, because you never know. This person has to probably go to work the next day. But then me and Russ were thinking, who else may have this problem? This may be not a problem that's just isolated. I'm sure a lot of us have problems when it comes to dealing with the inmates as a whole. So I think today what me and Russ are going to do is going to explore what we feel can help maintain that officer's presence. We have a few perspectives that we want to dive into, and hopefully we give you guys some good material that you can utilize. And don't forget, guys, also comment too, because the material is great that we provide, but it's the comments on the community that really builds a good discussion, maybe even something we could explore in our next show. But of course, my guest of the day, the founder, guys, of Keepers of Chaos on Facebook, Russ. Hey, Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos going?
Yeah, Keepers of Chaos is going great. Hopefully we're getting toward that 5,000 member mark. And, it's just really great in this age of COVID to, still get, so much engagement and work out of people coming there, putting their 2 cents worth in, people, asking questions, getting ideas. And I love every minute that I'm able to spend there.
Right. And just in general, how you been? And I know it's sometimes hard to get you on the show. I know you're a little busy lately.
I got a million irons in the fire, and, some issues here and there cropping up. And, just scheduling has been a bear, but I'm still, going to try and, get in every chance I get. Hopefully I'm going to be doing some videos for you in the next week that you can put up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, Russ. Obviously, my audience always looks for your video, looks for your insight. And I think today's going to be a very good discussion for us. I think we're going to have some fun with this. I've been thinking about it on my way home, and I know you already posted a response back to this officer, so it's definitely a lot that we could explore here. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show TR Talks for you brave men and women at work in correction, so please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Go to our sponsors, and when we come back, we are going to be discussing presence in yard. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it. It's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
All right, then we're back. Hey, guys, real quick. You can pre-order the book. There it is, Inmate Manipulation Decoded. Coming out very shortly, I think within the next couple of weeks. I don't know if it's going to be out by Christmas. I think it's maybe a week or two after, but pre-orders are being accepted. If you pre-order, you can see it in the link. You hit the PayPal, and it will be an autographed copy of the book. I'll have them shipped here, and then I just need your address, so then I'll ship it out. Hey, Russ, one of the things here I noticed is that you got this officer. He's in yard, right? But it feels like that the inmates are not aggressive. They're passive aggressive, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, this is kind of a situation where they're gauging him up, and they're seeing, how much backup, how much support he has, and exactly what his reaction is going to be. It's very easy when you're early on in your career to not have the proper reactions to these inmates, to not be able to, gauge exactly what it is you should do. You're kind of fumbling around, you're kind of bobbling the ball a little bit. What should you do? There's two main aspects to this, though, because I see a potential one that may or may not exist here, and that is what other officers are doing. And when I look at what these inmates are doing and breaking it down to really, the base essence of it, these inmates are having success with this guy, but they're also maybe having success with other people. And it just may be a lax unit, a lax yard. And so that may be feeding into it. They just may be, building on their successes and really taking this guy out of his game, because this is a game that he really hasn't established himself at yet.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something, guys. Anytime that you have to deal with the inmates in masses, so I'm really not a big fan of walking in yards. I know some people are, so I'm not going to contest that. I believe we have enough technology not to put our people in yards and mess halls, but some people still prefer that old school direct observation method, and I really can't argue against that, because that direct observation does deter a lot. My thing is more about safety and security, making sure my officers are safe. But I do respect both arguments. I do respect that there are some people that want that presence there. But I will tell you something right now. When you work in those areas where you're dealing with the inmates in the masses, like as I said, yard, rec, dorms, mass movements, the presence of authority from the officer has to be exemplified like times 10, because they already know that the numbers are just the ratio of officers to staff at that point is it's staff has a very low number. But with that said, most of the time we have concerns. The concerns are not with a bulk of the inmates who are in the yard. It's usually just the selected few, which we're able to maintain with what I would like to see is a good, healthy numbers. I'm not going to say we have to have the same or more numbers as the inmates that are in these yards, but a healthy number to be able to handle an initial incident and then maybe a backup if needed. But with that said, it's usually a selected group. And I think in order to maintain that presence of authority, here's where my concern is, Russ. My concern is, are we talking about initially setting the presence, or are we talking about losing the presence and having to gain it back?
Yeah, it's hard to tell exactly what he's getting at here, but I would say that because it's the beginning of his career, and this is something that's new to him. He's just feeling that these inmates are just trying to use that sort of passive aggressive, not openly aggressive moves to try and slowly break him down. And you can't let that happen, because once you get past a certain point in that, you're never going to get that back without some really serious effort on your part. So this is the kind of thing where you really have to take and put your nose to the grindstone and do whatever it takes to get that back into balance. Now, it might be an easy thing to do. It might be a hard thing to do that's dependent on the way that your facility runs. My last facility that I was at, it would have been no problem for me if I started, having inmates suddenly getting out of hand. I would have just gone, okay, whatever's going on, I need, 4 or 5 housing supports down here. We're going to put the end to this, and we're going to put the end to it now. We're going to pull people out in cuffs if we have to. If we have to go in with 40 millimeter launchers and do a handcuffing operation inside a dorm or whatever, we're going to do that too. There's some places that don't have that kind of manpower. There's some places that don't have that type of heart to be able to go and do that kind of thing. But whatever this particular situation is, you have to put yourself in a position to win, and you have to win every single time in what you're doing. So sometimes that just may be a matter of finding ways to inconvenience the inmates, finding ways to, continue pressuring them with searches, with your mere presence, and just putting them where they have to start complying with what you're having them do. That's not to say you're going in there, like a cowboy and challenging them, and suddenly, they're jumping off their beds and attacking you. You have to put that pressure on a little bit at a time and just keep holding it down.
Yeah, there's a lot you said there, Russ, that I want to explore real quick, because it's all spot on, by the way, and I appreciate the insight that you provide always. So one thing is we talked about the exemplifying that level of authority, right? Because right now inmates, they look at numbers, they feel that maybe at that point they have an advantage if something ever happens, and we have to be able to show that it's not about the numbers. It's about the fight in the dog, if you will. The support or the presence has to be maintained, one, by us internally, but also by the support that comes in. That was when the moment you said, hey, I need a backup team, I need this, that support will help maintain that officer's presence 100%. But the other question is when you have to reestablish. I think that for some reason, if I lost my officer's presence, it really depends on how it got lost. Like if for some reason, I don't know, I was afraid of something and I ran or something, that's going to be very hard for you to ever get that back. I'm going to be honest with you that. This doesn't look like it's the case here. It's just like this officer doesn't seem to be able to carry that level of authority to where the inmates care about the order that's being provided. Now, with that said, what I would do is this. I don't see an immediate threat at that point, right? So if I'm telling you to, bring it in, and I'm kind of being ignored or whatever it is, I'm not. You got to realize this is a strategy, and maybe Russ, we could talk about this a little bit. This is a strategy right now, right? So I don't know if I'm going to jump aggressively at that one inmate in the yard with all those other inmates around them just to kind of go tit for tat at that moment. I think I could play it out later when we have that more controlled setting, when maybe I'm with my supervisor and a few officers and we're going to have this one-on-one, like, hey, next time when I tell you to turn around or when I tell you to come back in, you come back in. But with that said, I think that when it comes to the presence of authority, you have to be strategic, so you're going to have to maybe take note of the ones that, if you're being ignored by the whole yard, that's a bigger problem. That's a bigger problem. Like we even when I come into work, I expect there are going to be certain inmates that are not going to listen to me. I expect that. You're going to get that. What I don't expect is not to be listened to by any inmate. If I come into work and there's not one inmate that's listening to me, I'm actually going to start going home and looking at myself like, what am I doing wrong? Because at this point here, I don't have not one inmate respecting any type of level of authority I have. Is it my supervisor not supporting me? Is it maybe my directives are not coming out as confident as they should? So there's the first part, Russ, and it just hit me on now, is the strength of your directive that you're given. When you're talking to these inmates, do they see that there's a hesitancy coming across in your voice, or do they know that voice is coming with a level of authority that matches what the position expects from you? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, part of the thing about, starting out your career is you have to find kind of a base on which to first set the tone that you're going to approach things with. Different people have different tones and different approaches. You have to find something that's yourself, but you also have to find something that no matter which way it's looked at, it has backbone. So you have to go in there with confidence. You have to project confidence. And you've got to understand that your tone probably shouldn't start out as confrontational. It should probably be something that first asks and then tells and then makes. So we've heard those terms before, ask, tell, and make. And so that's the way we ratchet things up over a period of time. The reason that we hold off on the whole making part is because we probably don't have enough staff there immediately. And a lot of times it's really a matter of finding that right tone to be able to get compliance, right? To get compliance so that we can establish a sort of rapport with the inmate population, so that we can take that and we have something to build on. If you start off from the get-go, you better get on your rack, you better do this, you better do that, you're going to put them in a position where they're painted into a corner and they have to, respond in kind. And that's probably going to devolve into something that's not very good. If we start off too weakly, though, if we go in there and we're timidly, hey, can you guys, do you mind getting on your beds? that's not gonna, save the day either. We have to go in there with confidence. We get, all right, everyone, come on, help me out here. Let's get on the beds, and then if something goes south from there, then that's when we start to ratchet it up. But you have to project that confidence. When you start out as a young officer in this business, the confidence that you have when you walk into that building, that dorm, whatever it is going to be different from the confidence that you're going to have 20 years later where you understand the game. I'll guarantee that that an inmate that's never seen me before, if I were to suddenly, pick up, put on my badge and go in, is going to react differently just because of the way I comport myself, the mannerisms that I have, and the level of experience that I'm able to project out there than he would to someone who's a brand new boot and obviously has that little bit of hesitancy and that little gleam that's in their eye. So that consistency that you have in that, just build on that, and you have to build on it every day. You have problems with a couple guys in a dorm one day. The very next day, you should be back in there again. You should be checking out what those inmates are doing. You should be looking at them. You should be in there doing a couple of searches or two and make sure that everyone knows that whatever little bit of problems that you had yesterday, that was yesterday. You're carrying on today, and you're going to bring the pressure to them. Every single day, you're going to bring that pressure to them. And they'll get to a point then where you'll reach this detente where, you've kind of decided, okay, you know what, he's not going to back off. And so, you know what, maybe this is not the right approach for us, because we always want inmates to want us to not be there. And so if they get to that point, like this guy's describing, they're just trying to take him out of the box, out of the game, and put him where he doesn't want to be there. And they're just fine with that.
Yeah, and Russ, I like what you said, where obviously we discussed the extreme, right? So you don't want to go in there too timid. Obviously, you'll get walked on. That's where the inmates will find that maybe they can intimidate you. But also, you also don't want to go in guns a-blazing all the time either, because that becomes the norm, and inmates start to get used to that and start seeing you as just a bag of wind. Like I like what you said. Project, be confident, and then it gives you a chance where, okay, if they're not acting right, I can go a level up. But if I go in there guns a-blazing already at that high level, I have nowhere to go when I really do have to project that authority. I know a lot of people may think that, you know what, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to start yelling and do things guns a-blazing. Guys, that doesn't work. What works, what I think the most is let's say me and Russ, we're working, a yard together. And let's say I do calmly say, hey, guys, come on, time to bring it in. Let's go. Let's go. And they decide not to bring it in. Then I may go, hey, guys, listen, I told you once, we're not going to do this again. Let's go. Now, again, if they go up now, I could go up a whole nother level. But if I go up right, the first time I'm calling them in, yo, guys, let's go. Go right in. Let's go. It's just at one point you're going to keep on doing that. And the inmate's going to be like, dude, this guy's just a barker, man. He's just a barker. At the end of the day, it's just he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and they just get used to that tone. I love the fact when this I think does work. When you are that calm officer, you do what's expected. You have that confidence projection, that middle ground. But then when you have no one that listens, and when that officer goes to take it up a notch, the other inmates start to look and say, okay, it's real, because this officer doesn't always do that. It's not the norm, and it kind of wakes people up a little bit. Would you agree, Russ?
Yeah, you want to always exhibit calm. When you start getting frazzled around the edges and you start, bringing the volume up, a lot of people read into that, and they read into it that, that you're losing your composure, and they're probably right. I'm not saying that there's not a time and place to be screaming and yelling at the top of your lungs, but usually not for just simple compliance. You got to understand that, if we're just trying to get simple compliance and it's not an emergent situation, that the calmer that we keep it, the better off we are. And then, if we start getting, a little bit of, back and forth, or they're just, hey, come on, that the other guy doesn't do this or whatever, then you can ratchet up a notch. then you can start to, explain to them or demonstrate to them that that kind of behavior is going to bring attention. It's going to bring attention not necessarily directly to them. It's going to start bringing attention to perhaps other people in the dorm who aren't going to like that. And then as things progress over the days, weeks, months, and years, those people are going to get at that guy and say, hey, man, don't be giving him a hard time, because then he comes in here, he focuses on us, he starts doing searches and stuff. And, we don't want you doing that. You got to understand that, we put pressure on there, and then we take pressure off to see how they react again. And slowly but surely, you try and curb them into the behavior that you want. That's not always possible, but usually it has some effect that's positive and some effect that tends to work. Now, sometimes you end up having to, take it all the way. There's some inmates that no matter what happens, you are going to end up in serious conflict with. You may even end up in a situation where it becomes a use of force. But that's not every inmate, and that's not generally every day, unless perhaps you're working, some of the, real high level general pop units or something like that. So what we're really trying to concentrate on here is how you get the most number of inmates to cooperate with you.
We'll start to bring a summary to our discussion. Is that I think it's not so much about the few that are ignored, because that's going to happen, guys. You have to expect that, but you have to ask yourself, do you believe? Don't look at the environment at first and not how they're reacting. First, look at yourself, because you're not going to be able to address any concern unless you look at yourself and realize maybe the concern is coming from within. That's why I give this officer a lot of credit. This officer, the way he did it was he put it on his presence, as opposed to saying, yeah, there's just these asshole inmates. No, he's first looking at himself to see maybe there's something that he can do to be a little bit more confident in the directives. But what I want him to realize, though, there are going to be certain inmates that just will not listen. It doesn't matter if you're the best officer with 25 years, you're just going to have some of those inmates. What I would ask this officer here is, how are the rest of the inmates respecting you? Don't go with the small little amount that, maybe ignore it. How's the rest coming along? The majority of the inmates, are they respecting you? Are they doing what you are directing them to do? And if yes, they are, then you're just going to have to correct this bunch. But doesn't mean that you have to do a whole paradigm shift and change your presence, because it may not be it may have nothing to do with your presence. It may be just, what? Strategically, as I said before, I know exactly which four of these are. I know who they are. I'm going to go ahead, and when they get secured, I'm going to see them either one-on-one or with my backup, and we're going to go ahead and let them reminded of whose house this in. But you also mentioned something else, Russ, that I want you to explore a little bit. Is what about if you have the one officer who has that good presence of authority, who's doing what's expected of them, but the support staff is not showing it? The support staff is not doing what's expected. How does that reflect the one officer who is doing it?
Well, yeah, that's a huge problem, because what can happen is then he has basically the choice of, doing less or perhaps even doing nothing. And you don't want that. And it doesn't necessarily have to be between just, several other officers and one officer that's doing their job. This can be the kind of thing that exists between shifts. All right. If you have a shift that's on top of everything and they're firing on all cylinders and they're making the inmates toe the line and they're doing their searches and they're intercepting contraband and they're doing the things that keeps that unit safe, and then you have the next shift that comes in and doesn't do any of that, they're making a lot of extra work for that one shift that is doing something. And they're actually, emboldening those inmates to start taking matters into their own hands. You really need, multiple shifts, multiple sets and cliques of officers that are on the same page. They're all about enforcing the rules. They're all about instilling discipline within those ranks of the inmates, and they take the job serious enough to make sure that if an officer is having a problem, that with some inmates, that those some inmates are having a problem with all of the officers.
I love that, Russ. You know what I like about this, and just kind of going back to my social psych things, is that if I had, let's say, one strong officer and 9 weak officers, the 9 weak officers will destroy the one. We know that 100%. But if I have 9 strong officers and one officer that's not so strong, the 9 should bring balance to the one. Because you would figure that, all right, maybe I'm still working on my presence, but the inmates know that that there's the other 9 officers. So even if I give the order, the inmates will think, you know what, let me still give that officer that level of respect because Russ is working today. You know, at the end of the day, sometimes we lean. If I'm a new boot, for a while, there could be a chance that, yes, don't get me wrong, as I'm developing my level of authority, sometimes it's good for me to have a strong person like Russ because he's willing to give me a little bit of his. And what I mean by that is just being behind, showing me support like Russ does. You know what I mean? It's not that I'm relying on you, Russ. It's just that I'm still establishing my way, you know? So it's good for us to be next to that person and let them get that confidence that they need to have that level of authority, right? But also you just being next to them, having that rookie sharing that light will also tell the inmates, you know what? I'm not going to mess with this rookie today. I'm not going to mess with them because Russ, and that's great. We want the inmates to see that Russ and this rookie are connected. So my concern here is if the inmates are challenging this officer's presence of authority, because you mentioned this at the beginning, Russ, I'm just piggybacking on this. I don't think it's only his presence of authority that they're messing with, because if he has a strong support staff that is present on that yard, that strong support staff should balance that officer out until they're able to develop. This officer's new, until they're able to develop that rhythm, which takes time. Would you agree?
Yeah, and you know, there's another aspect of this that you know, it's harder for this particular officer that we're talking about to just, you know, take this to heart and stuff. It would be a much better thing if they have some good FTOs or just some good leadership there, where he would have the ability to see some really fine correctional officer modeling some great you know, techniques and stuff, going in, talking to these inmates, getting compliance, having them, you know, cooperate with what he's doing, and let him see that, hey, this is the way you go into a dorm, this is the way you go into a cell, this is the way you talk to an inmate, and give him some ideas. Because, you know, when you're going in there blind, you've never talked to an inmate before on your first day, you don't even know what it means. You're not sure whether or not you said right or wrong. The inmate seemed to comply with everything you did, and yet maybe everything you did was wrong. If you don't have a way to know, if you don't have a way to judge the standard of the level of your performance, you'll make progress perhaps, but it's going to be very slow. So I would love to see, you know, good officers get in there and, you know, model that behavior, model those techniques for an officer like that, to, you know, give him some ideas, some things that he can make his own, some little skill sets that he can fall back on if things start to go wrong in a dorm or a yard or whatever.
Yeah, and you know what, Russ? I just want to comment one more thing because you're just on point today, man. The academy is only going to teach you so much. It's really that first interaction with the inmate that's really going to test you. And I really do feel that there should always be some support nearby, because you don't want to mess up that first interaction to the point where it's not about me progressing, but rather about me trying to rectify what I may have done wrong. Because I really feel that you could progress a lot quicker, right? As opposed to trying to earn something back, like something that has been taken away from me right at the get-go. So I like what you're saying, where if you have this good support and these good officers that you can role model off of, you know, as a rookie, look around, be observant, and when you're ready, you know, deliver that level of authority. And again, you have the support around you that will help mold you to where you got to be. My concern would be is when you don't get that support from senior officers and you're kind of just guessing how to maneuver when it comes to dealing with the inmate population, and right at the very beginning, an inmate just catches you at the wrong time. They test you. and you fail, however that failure outcome is, it could be many ways. And now you have to, it's not about progressing now. You've lost something that you now have to earn back. And to me, what's going to happen here, and I think this is true, you're going to see some rookies that, modeled the right senior officers, had the good support, and they're going to be at a different point in their career, let's say in 3 years, than that one person who didn't get that support, who didn't have anybody to model from. And now while everybody else is progressing, they're trying to earn themselves back to that neutral level. If I'm good and I'm entering this profession and I'm sitting here, progressing, I'm going from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's just do it that way, right? But now let's say, I come in and I make a big mistake because I'm not properly supported and my staff aren't really properly role models. I'm starting at a -10. So by the time my peers, my rookies, the ones that came in with me are at 10, I'm at 0. Does that make sense, Russ? Am I making sense?
Yeah, there's no substitute for good training and good training officers, really, and that's why, one thing that I go back to over and over again when people always ask me for, tips because they're going in the academy next Friday or whatever, I say, what, find the subject matter expert, the guy or gal that knows handcuffing or gangs or contraband interdiction or firearms or whatever, and pick their brains and become an expert yourself. But part of that, at the same time, can just be finding that person that knows how to communicate with a room full of inmates and can go in there and, come out with a positive outcome time after time and learn from that person. And sometimes it's all about observation and seeing how the inmates react and understanding how they project their presence and what makes it work. Also, you can look at some officers that are no good at it. You can see what they're doing wrong and maybe figure out, hey, you know what? I've been doing some of those same wrong things myself. Rest assured, though, that if you keep your nose to the grindstone, the officer you are that walks into that dorm 3 years from now is going to be far better prepared to deal with it than you are today. And the officer that does it 10 years from now is going to be much better than that officer, that is at that 3-year mark. So, just keep progressing. And there's going to be times where you're going to lose, some steps or something maybe, but as long as you keep your nose to that grindstone, you keep an idea of, what the actual goal is, you'll get there. So I don't view this as something that this officer is going through that's necessarily a negative, even, because this is something that they have to do in order to progress. They have to find out what that solution is. They have to find a way to learn what it is that they're deficient in, and then they have to pick up the ball and move it forward.
Yeah, Russ, what you're saying is very powerful. And I just want the senior officers and the rookies to know that we have to support our rookies, at the very beginning of their career, definitely, but obviously throughout their careers. But at the very beginning, because a mistake on your first day has a lot more weight than a mistake on your 5th year, mistake on your 6th year. The mistake on the first day could set a foundation that's very hard for that person to recover from. Because one thing is how the inmates will perceive them, but more importantly, how that person perceives themselves, because that's the template. That's when they're most vulnerable. So we need to make sure that they don't make that mistake on the first day because they don't have any successes to build them back up. But if I make a mistake on my 5th year, I could look back and look at all the success I have and find my confidence again. But making that mistake on that first day is very hard to recover from. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I just want to say I had a great time here. I always love, trying to, bestow some knowledge on some people and try and learn where I'm at the same time. Every time we go through this, I learn something new. So anyway, I hope everyone out there will take this to heart and just work to be the best, most professional officer that you can be. This is a hard job, but you can end up getting, a lot of satisfaction out of it. If you're willing to prepare yourself, work hard, train hard, and become good at it, but not just good, proficient, and excellent.
Right. And guys, just in closing, first of all, I think we gave a lot to pick and choose from. But again, it's good dialogue like this. But I think the best piece of advice really here is to look at yourself. But if given a chance, you know, like Russ mentioned, watch others, especially those interactions with the inmate population. I know if even, I don't know, a lot of places don't have academies first, but it's something that you really have to see live and in action. It can't be acted out. You got to observe it, you got to live it. But in the end, it's like, yeah, you could play role play in a training academy, but that's a lot different than when you're actually on that yard dealing with not just the one-on-one, but the potential for harm and the inmates that are around you. There's just so many factors in play that you're really not going to feel as you're not going to feel that in the academy. And that could really play out on your officer's presence, if you will, if you let those factors overwhelm you. That's the key. And just real quick, my last piece of advice is, and I think Russ said it too earlier, is that we're all going to have our bad moments. That's the key. We're going to have it. You know, we're going to have those inmates that don't listen, that challenge us, whatever it is. All we have to do, though, at that point is just remember, sometimes the presence of authority, we have it. It's just there are going to be certain inmates that don't accept it. And at that point, I don't want you chasing after it to the point where you become desperate and you lose your way. There's other ways to establish that presence of authority, even if that means, hey, Sarge, I need your help. Come down. Let the support come in and reestablish that presence of authority together, because that also works magic. It's not a sign of weakness to say, hey, I need help on this, because that shows the inmate population that we're together. And that's where the group presence of authority carries a lot of weight. So don't chase it to the point where you lose it. That's the key. Russ mentioned that. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.